All right, hi, Richard Moore from 8StepStartup here. Just a quick question early today. One of the ones I get every single day, which is if you could start your business again, if knowing what you know, what 3 things would you do? And I guess this is a question I get every day because people want to know when they're at the start of making their business, what 3, core things I would take with me to ensure that I got early traction. And it's a good question, it's something you should ask lots of people who have run startups, of course, made them work, because along the road to getting your success, there's a lot of things that you either do wrong or often do inefficiently, and then you get these kind of core principles or foundations that become kind of like almost like your daily or weekly foundation or cornerstones, and you stick to those things like glue because they seem to generate you success. So I spoke recently about my one piece of advice being around consistency, but yeah, to answer the question of that person directly, firstly, thank you very much for asking it. The first thing I would say is I would work harder. If I could go back in time to when I started, it's surprising how much harder you can work. And as I've always said, you can always find another gear. No matter how hard you work, you can always push a bit more. For many of you are aware, I've trained in Taekwondo for almost 20 years now. It's quite a long time. And I've won medals at national and international level. And it's surprising how much you can push yourself if you have to. Sometimes you can, you think you're training as hard as you possibly can, then if you're expected or it's required to find another gear, you really can do that. And often when there's the bait or incentive of a medal perhaps at stake, then that really does I suppose it really sorts the men from the boys, so to speak, and it really shows you what you're made of. So working harder, it's interesting. I was dipping back into the Everything Store, the book about Jeff Bezos and the start of Amazon recently. And I think it was interesting that the page that fell open was talking about how early on, there wasn't, I think the words that Brad Stone used was there wasn't much urgency to begin with. And one day, the 3 people, I think it was Jeff and these 2 other chaps who were kind of starting things in Jeff's garage. One guy turned up one day and then said, there was a note somewhere saying we're going to go hiking. So they just went hiking for the day. So there wasn't really all the kind of urgency there. And I think back to when I started my first business many years ago, and there wasn't too much urgency then either. But what I was doing was I had this kind of safety net. Whether or not Jeff Bezos did, I don't know and can't comment on him, but I had this sense of a safety net. I have a job, it doesn't matter if this doesn't work out. It was almost a bit of a hobby. But what I changed later on was I launched, certainly with 8StepStartup and the 2 businesses preceding that one, I had this idea that you should always try and make everything redundant. Everything that you've got already, make it redundant. So other areas of income you might have, obviously keep them working, but make it the case that if something happened to those, your new thing could take their place and add more. The worst case scenario is it does take the place of a previous business or a previous stream of income, and ideally, what does happen, of course, is that you get, an additional stream of income. So making things redundant through working very hard is one thing I would suggest. The next thing is I would have sold earlier. Not sold the business, but started selling earlier. It's surprising how early you can actually sell. I know someone who launched a product. It was a coaching course, so kind of similar to 8StepStartup, and he had no lessons ready at all. So he sold on the premise of, a bit like the beta course that I'm running at the moment. He sold on the idea that, you would buy the course at a lower rate perhaps, and, I think his idea was that, when you buy the course, you'd end up with access to all of his steps but he launched it with absolutely none ready, which is quite ballsy, to be honest. Even the illustrious Tai Lopez with his it wasn't 8-step style, it was 6-7 steps. Tai Lopez, I believe, launched with 10 of his steps intact, and the rest of them were all in his head. So that's, it's surprising how early you can sell. And of course, I mention it a lot, but read Hoffman on LinkedIn. He famously said, if you're not completely embarrassed by your product when it launches, you waited too long. And I like that idea of, get it out there, get a bit scared by the fact that real people in the real world are looking at your product, and then all of a sudden you have a sense of obligation to actually to kind of make something for them and deliver what they've been after. So it really makes you up your game when you get real life paying clients. But in addition to that, selling earlier means that you find ways to start monetizing your product way earlier than most would expect. Because there's this strange idea in business typically that you should wait till everything is ready, and then you move to the marketing, then you move to the sales thing, and you know what, sometimes you spend a hell of a lot of your time building and not any time actually moving to selling. And I've seen it before where people just they run out of money and they run out of time, and it never gets off the ground, whereas it may well have if only they just started selling sooner. So I would have sold sooner, or started selling much sooner. And with every business, I've progressively sold sooner and sooner, and it's been very effective. And in fact, one of the previous business before 8-stepStartup, I had completely sold out the course before I'd even organised a single lesson, and that worked very effectively. That was a person-to-person course, so that was a real-life one as opposed to online like this. So working hard, working harder, and then of course selling earlier. The final thing, or the third thing I would say I would do if I started all over, if I was much younger and all of that and knew what I knew, was more of a focus on fundamentals. And it's at least 3 times a day that I have people asking me questions like, shall I focus on, I need to focus now on building my website, so I need to put down my product, my MVP for now, and focus on my, building that. Or what do you think of this logo? I had that one recently. That's a classic. What do you think of the name of the company? What about my YouTube channel? What should I call it? All this stuff is superfluous to generating a business that is ready to go. All that stuff can come later. Do you really think the Facebook logo is that amazing? It's a lowercase white letter F. That's it. The reason why it's so prevalent is that it's abundant. That's what works about the logo. There wasn't some flashy designer, I would expect, that spent decades building all of their abilities and learning, getting great clients, then was hired by Facebook for $100,000 to build that logo based on what would resonate with the market. Nonsense. It was just a lowercase f, and then they got on with the business of making an effective website. So fundamentals, and what it means is day to day as well, looking at things like being very, very consistent with the things that I need to do, my routine and my maintenance-based things. Everything from making sure I read each day to making sure I, do my accounts at the end of every week, and the fundamentals, of course, around generating the business. Is it ready to roll yet? No. What needs doing? Do that first, and focus on fundamentals. So, hope that helps. And so to that person who actually asked me that today, that question, those 3 questions are directed at you. But for those of you who ask me in the future, I'll probably point you in the direction of this video. Thank you very much for listening. If you're still listening at the end of this video, then I'm opening up more spaces for beta testers on 8-stepStartup. So if you're interested in testing the course, you get full access to it as we are finishing up the content. Get in touch, www.8stepstartup.com. That's the word 8, not the letter. Oh, sorry, not the number even. Anyway, have a great day, and I'll speak to you soon.